Okay, welcome to today's video on absolute value inequalities. So I'm going to run through the two different cases for you, and then we'll solve some problems. So first off, if you think about it, absolute value of x is greater than or equal to 7. And you think about what numbers could you put in place of x that when you took their absolute value would be greater than or equal to 7. And so hopefully you know that 7 would work for sure. And if you put 8, absolute value of 8 is greater than 7, 9, so forth. And so we're looking at, and then if you think about like decimals and things like that, we're really looking at everything greater than 7 to make this true. Okay? So if I back up and I think, well, not only would everything greater than 7 work, but I could also do a negative 7, because that would be 7, and a negative 8, which would be 8, and a negative 9, which would be greater than 7, because that would be 9. And so really what I have is two different sets of answers. I actually have everything greater than 7 and everything, or everything less than negative 7. And so the case 1, what we're going to need to remember is that if I have a greater than or a greater than and equal to, either one, it is always an or, okay? Always an or. And your typical answer will look just like what we just graphed there. So in interval notation, I would write this as a negative infinity to a negative 7 bracket union with bracket 7 to positive infinity. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead, I think, and do an example. So let's just slip down to number 1 and look at an example. So this is, and again, the first thing you're going to want to look at is the fact that this is a greater than. So I automatically know that this is an or problem. Okay? And so what we're going to do is we're going to set up two answers, okay? And so we're going to have x plus 6 is greater than 7. So I'm just going to repeat my original equation, or, and we do put that in there, and then it's going to be x plus 6, and we want the negative 7, so we flip the sign, because we do have to follow our rule that if we make it negative, we flip the sign. Okay, so there's my two situations. So this is going to be x is greater than 1, or x is less than negative 13. So when I come in here and I go to graph, I have the less than the negative 13, I have greater than 1, and since this is an or, I'm asking for the union of the two graphs, and so that would be my final answer. And again, it looks like the answer that we had up here. Now I'm going to write my answer in interval notation, so it's going to go from a negative infinity to a negative 11. Negative 13, not a negative 11. Union with 1 to positive infinity. Okay, and so again, I could pick either set of answers and that would be true. Okay, so now let's look at the other case. What if it is a less than or equal to? So I want it less than or equal to 4. So would 4 work? Well, 4 would make it equal. Would 3 work? Yes. Would 5 work? And that would be no. 5 does not work. Okay, 2, would it work? Yes. 1? Yes. 0? Yes. Negative 1, that would give you 1, so that's true. Negative 2 would be 2. Negative 3 would be 3, that would work. Negative 4 would be 4, and that would be the equal. If I had a negative 5, would it work? No, that would be 5, which doesn't work. So this one doesn't work. So if you think about it here, what we have is basically that interval from a negative 4 to 4. So how would I write it? Okay, I would say, again, the interval is equal to from negative 4 to 4. So what's the key? If it is a less than or equal to, this is always an and. Okay, always an and. So those are the two pieces that you must remember when you're doing absolute value inequalities. Okay? So let's go ahead and do one here. So again, I look at it and I see that less than, I would automatically write the word and out to the side because that's what I know it is. So we're going to write the original equation, and then in our next equation we rewrite it and we flip the sign and make it negative. So now I'm going to solve it. Okay, so V is less than 11. I can go ahead and graph that and then do this one. Okay, so V is greater than a negative 8. And again, this is an and equation. So remember, and is the intersection of the two graphs. So where do these two graphs intersect? Well, they intersect right here where you see both graphs. So again, remember, we take this and we just rewrite it as the interval from a negative 8 to 11. That would be your final answer on the graph. So how do I write it in interval notation? Left would be a negative 8, right is 11. They're both open, so it's parentheses in both cases. Okay, now, I gave you some pretty simple ones. Let's talk about if they're not that simple. Here's the steps that we must go through. 1, you always isolate the absolute value. So in other words, I need the absolute value part all by itself, just like what we did with our absolute value equations. We're going to always create two cases, okay? So again, the first one you're going to keep it, and the next one you're going to switch the sign and switch the symbol, okay? Then you're going to solve both of the inequalities, okay? And I would put in there, I'm going to add in there to be sure to add either the and or the or, so you remember which it is, okay? And then you're going to graph your solution and put it in interval notation. Now, the other thing you could always do is you could check yourself, because if I come here, if I pick anything that is over here, it better work. If I pick anything here, it better work, okay? If I pick something in the middle here, it will not work, okay? Nothing I pick in here should not work, or should work, okay? The same thing here. When I come to this one, anything that I pick that is in here should work. But anything that I pick, we'll use red again, that is outside here should not work, okay? And so I could ask you on a test or quiz, and I could say, choose, one number to check that should work, and choose at least one or maybe more that should not work. Okay, and sometimes what we do is we break it apart. We'll talk about, okay, we've got different, I'll use a different color here. I'm going to use green. So we'll kind of break it into sections, okay? And so we'll say pick something in case 1 that doesn't work, case 2 that works, and case 3 that does not work, okay? So you might see me referring to that. Okay. I just want to do one more problem and then I'll be done. So I'm just going to skip on down to one of the harder ones and run through it real quick. So let's just do, how about let's do 8, okay? And so again, the first step is to isolate your absolute value. And so my absolute value that I have is right here, okay? So I'm going to isolate that piece of it. So to do this problem, I need to add 5 first. That's 72. I'm going to divide the 9 off. And there's so now my absolute value part is isolated. I have it all by itself. Now I'm going to set up my two cases. I'm going to come over here to the side and do it because I was too big there. So my first one is the regular one. And this is a greater than, so this is an or problem. So my other one would be 3 minus k is less than or equal to a negative 8. So do put the or in there. This is 5. And then this is a negative k, so I'm going to divide by a negative. So I have k is less than or equal to a negative 5. I'm going to box that so I keep track of it. So a negative k is less than or equal to a negative 11. Again, I'm going to have to divide that off. Whoops, not 11. Okay, and so again, I'm going to switch my sign. Okay, so I'm going to go graph it. So I have everything less than or equal to a negative 5. And I have everything greater than or equal to 11. See that 10, so 11 would be about right there. Okay, and so that would be my graph. Okay, so that would be my final answer there. I'm going to highlight it so you can see it a little better. Okay, so my interval notation then would be a negative infinity to a negative 5. I think I put that on a negative 6. That was my bad. Negative 5 would be here. Just noticed that. I didn't look at my grid. There we go. Okay, and that would be a bracket. And then that is union, because remember, or is union, with bracket negative 11. Make sure I put that one in the right spot. Positive infinity. Okay? So that is how you do it. Again, do not forget when you're doing that you must isolate. Okay, that's a key. Isolate and then always set up your two cases.